From the prayers of Hannah to the poetry of Job and the Psalms, the Bible speaks of the pillars of the earth, a phrase that sparks wonder and curiosity. Are these pillars real? Are they buried deep beneath the earth's crust? Or are they something more symbolic, pointing to deeper truths about God and creation? The phrase "the pillars of the earth" appears in the Bible a few times and is meant to be poetic, not literal. It doesn't mean the earth sits on giant stone columns or that the world is held up by actual supports like a building. Just like today we might say the four corners of the earth to talk about the whole world, without thinking the earth is square, the ancient writers used expressive language to describe the strength, order, and stability of the world. 1. What does it mean? The pillars of the earth is a metaphor. It's a way of saying that God is the one who holds everything together. Just as a house stands on pillars or a foundation, the earth is pictured as being firmly supported by God Himself. These pillars speak of the unseen strength that keeps everything from falling apart. The message is simple: God is in control. 2. Where is it found in the Bible? Let's look at a few examples. 1 Samuel 2 verse 8. In a beautiful prayer, Hannah says, "The pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them He has set the world." She's celebrating the power of God to lift the humble and bring down the proud. In her view, God didn't just make the world, He holds it up. That's how strong and dependable He is. Job 9 verse 6. Job says that God shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble. Job is overwhelmed by God's power. If even the earth's strongest foundations shake before Him, who can argue with God? Psalm 75 verse 3. God says, "When the earth totters, it is I who keep steady its pillars." This verse pictures the world as unstable, possibly due to human evil and injustice. But God steps in, calms the chaos, and keeps the world from collapsing. In this sense, the pillars could even symbolize the people or principles that support society, like truth, justice, and righteousness. 3. What about other translations? Some Bible versions don't say pillars. They use words like foundations of the earth, which helps us understand what's really being said. It's not about physical columns. It's about the basic structure of life, the things that keep creation going. 4. So what's the big idea? When the Bible talks about the pillars of the earth, it's really saying this: God is the one who made the earth, supports it, and keeps it going. He is the true foundation. It's a reminder that no matter how shaky life gets, the world is still in God's hands. He is the great architect and the unshakable support of everything. These are vital truths about salvation that many people need to hear. So, please like and share so that more can receive this message for Jesus' sake. Now, let's take a deeper look at the meaning of the pillars of the earth. The beauty of biblical poetry lies in its ability to take something physical, like pillars, and use it to describe something invisible and divine. Let's take this idea deeper by exploring how it connects with God's nature, His power, and His relationship with creation and people. 1. A picture of God's creative power. When we think of a building, we know it needs a strong foundation to stand. If the foundation cracks or weakens, the whole structure is at risk. In the same way, when the Bible says God set the world on pillars, it's showing that God is the master builder, the one who designed the earth and made sure it would stand firm. This picture is meant to inspire awe and worship. Just think, the mountains, oceans, and skies are all resting securely because of God's wisdom and strength. Everything has its place, and nothing exists by accident. The pillars symbolize the deep hidden truths God built into the world, truths that uphold creation and keep everything in balance. 2. A sign of stability in unstable times. Many times in the Bible, people felt like the world was falling apart. Nations were at war. Leaders were corrupt. The righteous were suffering. In those moments, writers like Job and the psalmists described the world as tottering or trembling, but always added that God was still holding the pillars steady. This is a message for us today, too. When our personal world feels shaky, when there's trouble, fear, or uncertainty, we can remember that God is still the one upholding all things. He doesn't let the world spin out of His control. Even when we don't understand what's happening, He remains our foundation. 3. People as pillars. There's another beautiful layer to this image. In some places in the Bible, people themselves are described as pillars. In Galatians 2 verse 9, the Apostle Paul refers to James, Peter, and John as pillars in the church, people who helped hold up and support the faith community. In Revelation 3 verse 12, God promises to make the faithful into pillar in the temple of my God, meaning they will have a permanent, honored place in His presence. In Psalm 144 verse 12, children are compared to pillars, strong, graceful, and full of purpose. This tells us that God not only holds up the earth, but He also raises up people to be pillars in their own homes, churches, and communities. If you live by God's truth, if you walk in integrity and love, you become a pillar, someone who strengthens and stabilizes the world around you. 4. The message behind the metaphor. In every place it appears, the phrase "the pillars of the earth" points to a single truth. God is the source of strength, order, and support for everything that exists. Whether He's holding the physical world together, bringing justice in society, or raising up people to stand firm for truth, God is the unseen force behind all stability. The poetic language invites us to see beyond what's visible and recognize that behind all creation is a God who cares, builds, sustains, and restores. 5. Not scientific, but spiritually profound. It's important to remember that the Bible is not trying to teach astronomy or geology when it speaks of pillars. These poetic images were never meant to describe the physical structure of the earth, but rather to convey deep spiritual truths. Just as a foundation is essential to any building, God is essential to all life. The pillars of the earth are a symbolic way of saying, God built the world with wisdom. He supports and sustains it with power. He governs it with justice. He is actively involved in upholding both creation and human society. The Bible isn't giving us a science lesson when it speaks of the pillars of the earth. It's giving us a spiritual truth wrapped in poetry. God is the builder. He laid the earth's foundation. God is the sustainer. He keeps it steady when it shakes. God is the restorer. He raises people to stand strong like pillars. God is unshakable. When everything else fails, He remains firm. 6. Living with this truth in mind. What can we take away from all this? When life feels shaky, remember, God is holding the pillars steady. When evil seems to win, trust, God is still in control. When you feel insignificant, know, God may be raising you to be a pillar in someone else's life. The image of the earth resting on pillars reminds us that our world is not random, not fragile, and not forgotten. It is established, sustained, and secured by a faithful and powerful God. The pillars of the earth are the Lord's. 1 Samuel 2 verse 8. He is still holding everything in place. God bless you.